So my first company was in healthcare, very different industry than the one that I'm building in now. It took me 9 months the first time to just build up my profile, and it was a whole process. And the second time it was less than 2 weeks.
What advice would you give other founders that are here on visas as they go and raise money or try to get funding to build their companies?
I think the biggest advice I have is learn how to sort of market yourself, talk about yourself.
How did you meet that mentor?
This particular person was actually an introduction by a potential investor.
What is pieces of advice you would give a founder?
It's really focusing on distribution. I think a lot of first-time founders, they focus heavily on the product, which is important. And I think
how to find a bank, how to find an immigration attorney, how to raise money. In this episode of Visa to Venture podcast, we have an exciting, amazing founder. Her name is Liesel Vaidya, and she's the founder of Imera. Imera is an amazing company that does something very unique. Everything that you do normally, looking on Reddit, spending hours on Google, you can all find in one platform. And the story of Liesel is incredible because she's already a serial founder. She had already a previous company that she started as a student in the United States. And I'm super excited to understand how she did it, how she found mentors, how to raise money. Amazing tips for you guys as founders to understand what you can do coming to the United States as a newcomer and building companies in the United States, raising money, and all the things that you can do to be successful in this episode. I'm excited. I'll see you on the other side. Well, thanks guys for tuning into our podcast. And Liesel, I appreciate that you're here with me today on this podcast. And how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing amazing. I know you are in New York right now, right?
Yeah, we always joke about this, I feel like, but usually I'm in a box because it's New York City, and usually you're either in your office or you're, in sunny, outdoors.
I'm
Yeah.
recording from my home studio today, but
Yeah.
That's the beautiful thing about technology, where we are, able to do this no matter where we are. And I think, this episode is special because, I interview a lot of people, but, we know each other pretty good. We also, work together, we collaborate between our companies. And I think it's, I'm excited to kind of, understand more about your journey and maybe learn some things that I didn't know about you.
Yeah.
But the podcast itself, we interview international founders that are coming here, and there's always a bit of immigration connected to it because we're all kind of worried about how do we come here and what is going to be the story. And immigration has always been sometimes even a roadblock to a lot of the founders. I know you are obviously from Nepal. You came to the United States. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about what brought you here, the early days, and why the US in the beginning.
Well, first of all, I think next week it's going to be 11 years exactly since I moved to the US. Time passes by really fast. But going back to why I came to the US in the first place, it's really going back to ambition and wanting to be in a place where, you can sort of if you dream it, you can, be it, do it. And I feel like there's no other place in the world that truly gives you that opportunity. And also, I'm from Nepal, I was born and raised there. My family still lives back home. Back when I was considering moving to the US for college, we used to have electricity cutoffs that lasted 18 hours a day. There were a lot of challenges on day-to-day, living that I felt limited a lot of opportunities for a lot of people, especially if you're ambitious. I felt like I was living inside a bubble, so I really wanted to move somewhere that where I didn't have to worry about basic infrastructure and could really dream big.
Yeah, no, of course. I think for me when I first moved to the US, it was all about, oh wow, I can actually do this if I work hard enough, or the kind of people you meet is just incredible. So I think only if somebody moves here and they actually start the journey, they realize how much opportunities they might be able to get here, right?
Exactly.
And I know, obviously you came on a student visa, right? Kind of like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
But the one thing that I didn't do that you did is you started a company on a student visa, I think. So maybe you
Yes.
can tell us, because again, people are thinking, well, I come here on a student visa, F1, I can't do anything. Tell us about that first company on a student visa, and how did you kind of like navigate what you're allowed to do on a student visa? I mean, even starting a company as a student, like,
Mhm.
where did this come from?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of being a founder is that you choose to do things and then you figure out like how to do it after. So even like starting a company back in, back at that time, like I had this like problem in front of me. I had this like idea of like how we wanted to like solve this like, said problem. And then the rest, which is like immigration and everything else, I was like, I'll figure it out. Although like figuring it out was very, very difficult. And I feel like now it's a lot more popular for, students or other folks to go down the founder path and do a startup. But back then, when I was starting out, there weren't really a lot of people, and the limited amount of people that I knew who went from like being a student, on a student visa to starting a company, it was really challenging. We had limited resources. A lot of the advice that we received from sort of traditional law firms were very like cookie cutter, like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole type of situation. So it's very difficult, and you take you try to talk to like, I think the approach that I took was trying to talk to like as many different people as possible, and then like making the decision for myself, because every other person gave slightly different advice on what you can and couldn't do. And then I did my own like research as well of trying to read the fine print on the legal side of, okay, like what exactly are my limitations and how can I like do what I want to do while like still being sort of like above, good on the legal side of things.
No, I mean, again, it has the motivation of doing it as a student because you have you start realizing all these opportunities. What was that first company? Maybe you can share like a few sentences about it. What was it, and what happened?
Yeah, so my first company was in healthcare, very different industry than the one that I'm building in now. And essentially, what we were building was access for survivors of sexual assault to, access digital health care. So we saw this massive problem where, over 70% of survivors of sexual assault didn't necessarily report or, go get care following an assault. And we wanted to try to solve that. And we essentially built a set of tools and services that really met people where they were at in that moment. And we wanted to leverage, technology and everything that we had at our disposal to make that moment a bit easier for folks. We also more broadly delved into Gen Z healthcare because we were working with a lot of people who were between the ages of 18 to 25-year-olds. But that was, broadly the problem that I tried to solve for about 5 years of my life after college. And, it was a very difficult space to operate in because not a
Yes.
lot of companies choose to like solve that problem. And it's also very difficult to, I think, like try to solve problems that are so deeply personal to people. And, oftentimes very, very traumatizing as well.
No, I can imagine. I mean, it's
Yeah.
more of a almost like a social impact project when you're
Hmm.
trying to solve an issue. But I'm sure
Yeah.
that experience led you to what you're doing today, to Imera, right? The company that
Yeah.
you're doing today. So why don't you tell us a little about, I mean, maybe in your own words, how does actually Imera help immigrants, right?
Yeah.
Navigate all, whatever is happening in the U.S., living in the U.S. And I guess there's some kind of a gap in the market that you found that you're
Hmm.
addressing. Why don't you share more about that as well?
Yeah, so I think like solving, the work that I did before really helped me build trust in a product in a lot of ways and do that at scale. And the problem that I'm trying to solve now is really, stemming from a personal challenge that I faced during my entire journey, which is really trying to make immigration, navigating, life as an immigrant easier for people. So I came here on a student visa now, like almost 11 years ago. And at many different critical milestones in my life, I realized that I was missing, some piece of the puzzle or like some knowledge that would have potentially altered my entire trajectory. And I was always baffled at how, we received guidance, which was, I spent years like doom scrolling Reddit and like trying to join like group chats with strangers on like WhatsApp and Facebook. I had the privilege of, having a couple of people that I knew who had like gone through the process before. So both of my elder brothers, they studied in the US, as well as, like being a founder, you get exposure to a lot of other founders and VCs who sort of know people or sort of have gone through the process themselves. So I had the privilege of my network in that way. But again, like I found that, there was a massive knowledge gap and, hundreds of thousands of people every single year are falling through their cracks and their lives are completely changed because of it, right? When you're on a temporary visa, every other decision that you make, I feel like could be trajectory changing. So like, if decisions that you make have such high impact, why shouldn't there be a platform or tool that you can like use and rely upon to like make those decisions and make life a bit easier? And yeah, that's how Imera was born. We just made a launch last month, and it's been an exciting few weeks.
So before Imera, what do you think are some of these solutions that immigrants would try to go to and kind of piece them together?
Yeah.
To make an Imera?
So it's basically a combination of, like I said, things that I did before. And sometimes I still catch myself doing, and then I'm like, what am I doing? Like I can just, use Imera, or like I have all these immigration attorneys on speed dial basically. But it's a combination of, doom scrolling Reddit. So there's, tons and tons of posts every single day on like Reddit immigration, and like every visa type has their own like, subreddits. And then there's also a lot of like groups that I joined, and people join on like WhatsApp and like Facebook. So if you're a part of a college or university, they have their own like subgroups. If you're a part of, I don't know, a specific region or a state, they might have their own like groups based on different communities. And then I think after that, it's just like frantic like Google searches. You're trying to like find answers and like open, I don't know, 50 tabs, like looking for answers. And now it's probably ChatGPT as well. But it's a culmination of all these things. And oftentimes, again, like by the time people look for options or start Googling things, it might be a little too late for them, right? It's that period of time, like especially if you have like 60 days left to like make a decision. And it's like for that, like it's really not enough time, and you need to ideally you need to have started like way earlier. And if it's that critical time, then you really, really need the right guidance.
And who would you say are our typical target audience of Imera? Would it be students coming to the United States, young professionals who are living here trying to figure out how to move to the next step in their life? What do you feel like are our typical customers that will be using the platform?
Anyone who is on the US on a student visa or a work visa is an ideal Imera user. So our current platform basically provides a lot of recommendations based on your visa type, and we only allow those with either a work visa, a student visa, or a visitor visa to basically sign up. And we personalize the guidance that we provide based on your nationality, your personal goals, what country you're from, because that can also limit or expand pathways to you. And then we also take into account, like, other interests and things that may be useful in order to like provide guidance. And yeah, based on all that information and a lot of data that we've gathered through, many different like vetted sources like the government, immigration law firms, nonprofits, universities, research like partners, we then generate these insights, these guidances that evolves based on where you are in your journey. So at no point in time do we want you to be sort of like lost in trying to figure things out by yourself. We want you to know exactly what you have to know at any given point in time. That's kind of how we're starting. And like in time, what we're doing is we're also going to help you do a lot of these things. So instead of just telling you, here's what you need to know, we'll actually help you do a lot of these things as well.
And I love that the fact that how hard it is to be an immigrant in the United States, just navigating all
Yeah.
these things, like, having this one place where people can actually get answers in real time. And
Hmm.
especially now with this administration, we get so much anxiety and people are so worried whether they're reading the right things online. I think you guys just showed up in the right moment.
Yeah.
Right? Lisa, you obviously, you live in New York. There's so many international founders there, global, amazing people like yourself. What do you think these global founders are bringing to the US ecosystem, specifically the entrepreneurial ecosystem, getting those founders to
Yeah.
come?
I mean, just the fact that over 60% of all billion-dollar companies were founded by immigrants is, a great point to start with. I think, people are really, really, immigrants are really, really talented, and they've built some of the best companies in the world and in the US as well. Many new technologies and services would not have existed if this country did not sort of, welcome them. So I do think that we need to nurture talent and expand pathways to make it easier for really talented people to do the work that they want to do, where they want to do it. So, I mean, I'm excited for, all the things that, more immigrants are going to build now and in the future. We're already using like a lot of tools that, people who initially came on visas have built. So,
I mean, this is kind of like, I spoke to a founder who said that, they bring culture. They also bring motivation for our local entrepreneurs. Like,
hmm.
somebody who's never left the US and now they're meeting
Yeah.
somebody from Nepal or from Israel or from
Hmm.
Germany. Now they're having these brain sessions and like they're both creating something amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I mean, like I said, when I came back from New York after visiting there with you guys, I feel like I was so inspired. And coming back to, quiet California, it's like, the energy and
Yeah.
it drives people to do better things, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it takes a special kind of person. I think, like all immigrants, like you, the fact that you leave everything that you've known your entire life, your entire families in many cases, and move to a new country and start all over for the hope of a better future, like that should say a lot. And immigrants are incredibly resilient, which makes for really good entrepreneurs, really good employees. They're super hardworking. So yeah, it's more an asset, really.
Well, an
Yeah,
asset and inspiration to so many of you.
yeah,
I think my hope is that, founders that are watching this podcast are going to learn really cool things and take value. And I think one of the things that you do well and in a very strategic way is know how to be able to raise money for your startup, for your previous one, this one. Maybe you can share some tips, or what are some of the good things for, especially for somebody who is a foreign founder that maybe doesn't have so much credibility in the US. What advice would you give other founders that are here on visas as they go and raise money or try to get funding to build their companies?
yeah. I think first and foremost, like you have to be so comfortable just talking about yourself and sort of highlighting all your achievements. I feel like even when I look back at my own journey, I still feel like I'm super humble, but I was incredibly humble in a way that actually didn't serve me, especially as a founder. And in the US, like no matter if you're a founder or in any other role in your career, you have to like really put yourself and like out there and like stand out from the crowd. And that's just not something that a lot of people, who are born and raised in many different parts of the world are really taught. I think especially being Asian, you're sort of taught to like put your head down and not really, stir up things and whatnot. But I think the biggest advice I have is learn how to sort of like market yourself, talk about the work that you do. And I think a lot of that actually goes hand in hand with, if you're looking at specific types of visas like the O1 and EB1s, you sort of are forced to do a lot of these things as well, which actually anecdotally, like back when I was applying for my first O1, a lot of the process felt so uncomfortable because I felt like I had to put myself out there and do all these like things on the media side,
Yeah.
speaking on panels and like just like talking about myself in a way that I never really had. But that actually ended up becoming so helpful for many different reasons, for my company, for myself personally, for my personal brand. Like, and so you just have to like do that. So I think that's the biggest thing, but it is a learning process, especially if you're like starting out for the first time. The first time I was fundraising was like I was almost right out of college. I was 23, 24 years old. And I learned on the go, but definitely now that I have the privilege of doing this the second time, I'm much more intentional, and it does get easier, but it's still like it's always hard raising money.
Right, exactly. Especially, I think the biggest thing is like the rejection, right? Maybe
Hmm.
you ask, and sometimes you get no's, and
Hmm.
it can impact your personal motivation, but it shouldn't probably.
No, yeah. I mean, you're gonna get rejected so many times. You just have to be comfortable with it. You have to like use that as ammunition to like keep driving the next one even better. And there's ways and lots of tips and tricks in terms of how to like structure things so that maybe the first wave of people that you talk to and reach out to, they're not sort of your top 10 like VCs that you want to pitch to. Maybe they're sort of the top, like, I don't know, in the middle list or like the bottom list. So you practice a little bit, kind of like if you're interviewing for a job, right? So there's a
Exactly.
lot of approaches that you can take, and it does take practice for most people to like really learn how to like speak a certain type of language that really gets you momentum and like noticed. Because in early stages, it's so much about like who you are as a founder and why someone believes in you versus like, exactly what you're building per se. So yeah, you really have to like focus on presenting yourself, I feel like.
Yeah, which I think is important in any field, right? Especially,
Yeah.
whether you're trying to get a job or, lead organization, the way you carry yourself, the way you speak about yourself
Hmm.
is a key. That's something
Yeah.
I guess you learn and improve with the years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You started in healthcare, which was your first industry, and then you chose to get into immigration.
Hmm.
And I think, which is a common question that I've seen people ask, how do you choose the area or the industry you're going to disrupt? Because that choice can make a difference in terms of how much time and energy you're going to spend, and maybe you're going to realize it's a wasted time. So I
Hmm.
know you're an immigrant, but that couldn't have been the only reason. Like, why do you think immigration is such a great space to be in right now? And again, I'm speaking from a biased space, but I'm asking you, why do you think that is a space that needs to be disrupted and is
Hmm.
really good to build something different?
Yeah, I mean, immigration in general, I think it's a huge market. There's a lot of potential. That's why you've seen a lot of companies and startups sort of being built in the space in the last few years as well, especially with, the upcoming rise of AI and other technologies. But in general, like immigrants spend a lot of money for opportunity. They will spend a lot of money in order to continue having those opportunities. And, businesses need to be born to support those opportunities and create those opportunities. So I think it's a really exciting space. And in general, more broadly, I think picking an industry really goes back to, I feel like, do you really care about this like particular problem or industry enough? Because when things get like really, really hard, and they will, at many points in your sort of timeline and journey, are you going to be motivated enough to like wake up and go solve that problem? Because not every problem like deserves, or like will sort of really get you into that like headspace, or really you're not really going to be like into it all the time. So it really needs to be something you're super passionate about. If not, like you're probably going to tap out at some point.
Right, exactly. And I think that's kind of where the biggest mistake that a lot of the founders make, because they don't know how to pace themselves,
Yeah.
which is kind of where we fall.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people that are that I interviewed before on the show. They seem to have some sort of wisdom, kind of like they told me they had a mentor that told them something that they learned, or they learned by trying to do things and failing. And I'm just curious because you've done this from, like I said, very, very young age. You came as a student.
Hmm.
First of all, did you use any mentors, or how did you or if not mentors, how did you navigate yourself to move from point A to point B and kind of move forward? Because I think a
Yeah.
lot of people are like wondering, how did they do this? And maybe you can share a little bit behind the scenes of this.
Yeah, I mean, I've had so many mentors, like literally countless, throughout my journey, and they came in all types of forms. And I would say, like, I think the only way I got through many different like crazy like high moments, and why I even like had those opportunities, or like navigated really really difficult times in my entrepreneurial journey, is because I had all these like advisors and mentors that I could talk to. um, and you're going to sort of want to like build those, start identifying people that you ideally want like in your I think I heard someone saying like have your like personal like board of directors. You sort of like want that. And like for example, like when I was building my first company, I had a mentor that I spoke to every Friday at 3 p.m. for like over 4 years. Literally every single Friday at 3 p.m. we would speak for an hour or more. And it was really helpful. And it also really, really helped that, he was a serial entrepreneur who was very, very successful. And he was just there. Sometimes he would just listen to everything, I had to tell him. Other times he'd give me a ton of advice, or like ask me really important questions that helped me shift my perspective about a lot of things. You're going to want, many of those people in your life for many different things, both like in your like company, your career, but like maybe even like outside of it.
How did you meet that mentor, for example?
Um,
This particular person
yeah.
that all this
This
time.
particular person was actually an introduction by a potential investor, like an angel investor, and she was like, "Hey, like, I know this person who is really interested in the space that you're working in. He might, really want to chat with you guys." So that's how we initially got connected, and he was really passionate about the space that we were building in, at that time. And we had no formal, like, he wasn't like a formal advisor or anything, but he just every single Friday he picked up the phone. Either I would call him or he would call me, and we chatted for an hour every single Friday for over 4 years. So
Oh
you
wow.
you never know, and I would honestly advise, like, if you have like people that you look up to, like, people love receiving inbounds, and most people will give you like 15 minutes of their time, like 20 minutes of their time, like if you ask for it. So like shoot your shot, try to get those mentors, and build your
Absolutely.
like personal board of directors. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially having such an opportunity to have somebody so wise to guide you for 4 years. I mean,
Hmm.
you look back now like, oh my God, I learned so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, of course.
Now I know that Imera is not just you. You have a co-founder, of I think a few co-founders, and a lot of people that are going through this journey of being a founder, a foreign founder. They don't know that many people. How did you? Well, first of all, how did you meet your co-founders? How did you guys decide that you're going to do this and divide your roles? Maybe walk us through this process of doing this.
Yeah, so I have one co-founder for Imera. Her name is Vika, and we initially met a couple of years ago when she was working for one of my former investors. And I just remember the first time we met, we just couldn't stop talking about immigration, like just endless yapping about immigration, both of our experiences. She was also an immigrant in the country. Her path looked very different than mine, because her family won the diversity lottery like visa, which is very hard to do. My family's been applying for it for 30 years. We've never won. But anyways, we stayed in touch after that, and at some point last year we reconnected, came together, and decided to do this thing. But in terms of like finding a co-founder, I think, like you said, Jacob, like it's really, really important that you have complementary skill sets. And ideally, it's someone you probably already know or have worked with, so you know exactly how they work. Because you can be really good friends with someone, but if you guys don't work like well together professionally, then I've seen, a lot of like friend breakups like happen as well, where they never talk to each other again. But at the same time, like if you worked with someone and you've really enjoyed working with someone at a different company, in college perhaps, or something else, then, that might be your future co-founder. And, there's lots of different ways to go about finding a co-founder in terms of like if you're technical, you might want someone non-technical who really has like strong skill sets across different parts of the house. That's going to be, like fundraising and like marketing, sales, like all these other things. If you're like non-technical, you probably want someone technical who can either build a product or, lead a team that can build the product. So there's a lot of considerations that you have to make. But at the end of the day, it's, someone that you really, really trust, you really align with on a value like perspective and level. And someone you see yourself working alongside for the next like 5, 10, like 15 years, like potentially, right? Like you're probably going to spend more time with them than like any other person in your life for a long time. So it's really important that you take that into consideration.
I love that. And you have an amazing co-founder. I know Vika, she's great.
Yeah.
And you guys actually really complement each other. And from the outside looking at you, I mean, it's like the perfect match. And, I think that, hopefully if founders are going to watch this and they will say, well, she told us all these things, but what would be, if somebody came to you, like now you're the mentor. So, it's 10 years go by, now you are that person and you have a young founder that is talking to you every week. What is a couple of pieces of advice you would give a founder in today's society where with AI and all these changes we're seeing, somebody who's like, okay, I don't know what to do. I want to launch this, but I also want to launch this. What would you say?
Well, first of all, if they're an immigrant founder or someone who's an immigrant who wants to be a founder, I'd first and foremost like get them started on their O1 visa path because it's one of the best visas that you can be building your company in. That's like key because it took me 9 months the first time to like build up my profile, and it was a whole process. And the second time it was less than 2 weeks, which, by the way, for those listening in, Jacob's firm filed both of those visas and got it approved in less than 24 hours both times.
Thank you. Thanks for the
Yeah,
plug.
of course. I think like that's like number one for, if they're an immigrant. Second is really like focusing on distribution. I think a lot of first-time founders, they focus heavily on the product, which is important. And I think especially if you're a first-time founder, you have to like prove that you can build something and like get enough traction and like scale it. But at the same time, a lot of people really like distribution is an afterthought, which I think is a mistake because if you can like with AI especially, you can build so many things so easily, but if you can't distribute, you can't sell, you can't market, like it's going to end up in a dumping ground somewhere, basically. So I think that's like really key. So even building Imera, for example, we spent the first few months after we had the idea, like really building our distribution channels. So even though we are starting with a consumer approach, we have tons of like B2B distribution partners already secured. And, we sign partnerships with them. So that's something to really consider, I think, for a lot of founders building. And I think like in today's like age, depending on like what industry you're building in, most likely like marketing and like brand building to some extent might become important. So again, going back to our like earlier conversation about like being comfortable, like building a personal brand and like putting yourself out there, like that also becomes really important, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that last thing you said, because in this society, there's so much noise, you have to stand out. And today, the personal brand connected with what else you're going to be building, super amazing advice.
Yeah.
As we come to the end of the podcast, there's one question that I ask all people that come to this show. And that question is, imagine you go back to your 14, 15-year-old self, coming of age, you're growing to become the person you are. And from what you learned now as a foreign founder, building everything, what would you say that young Liesel that will help her with skills or make some kind of a change that will make a change and impact in your life today?
I think if I could talk to like my 14, I think if I could talk to my 14 or 15-year-old self, I'd probably like tell her like, Like you have no idea what life has in store for you. It's only going to get better and better and better. So like basically say yes to as many things as possible in terms of like, learning opportunities and putting yourself out there. And yeah, I feel like, as I get older, I'm also actually going back to a lot of my childlike like qualities, my personality that I used to have when I was much younger. So I think like actually not losing sight of your childlike self and qualities also like is a great advice.
Stay true to yourself,
Yeah,
to that young voice, right?
yeah, exactly.
I had a one founder that he was saying, well, if he could go back and teach something, his 14-year-old self would be is to learn how to manage money better and actually be able to sell, like the art
Yeah,
of being able to convince
yeah,
people, like even like convince your parents to let you stay late. It's a form of
yeah. I
selling.
had to convince my parents to send me here, so
You see, you
yeah,
did that.
yeah,
But I just love this question because somebody asked me that question
yeah.
many years ago. I was like, you know what,
Hmm.
that's a great question because
Hmm.
I feel like we're so different when we are so young,
Hmm.
and we can't obviously change the course of our life. But if we could hypothetically, and it's
Hmm.
if I could do this or this, it wouldn't have changed our life. But it was nice to know that that is one thing that you were missing, and now you're better at it because you have all these
Hmm.
skills,
Yeah.
and it's just beautiful. And Liesel, well, first of all, thanks a lot for taking the time to be here. If somebody wants to find Imera, what are we? I'm gonna put links in the show notes. But why don't you say verbally the website or what else they can find you?
Yep. So if you're listening in, you can go to withimera.com and go to our website. If you are an immigrant on a visa, then you can go to the app stores or the Play Store and download the Imera app. Just search for Imera, Imera. Imera, by the way, is just a combination of immigrant and era together. That's how we came up with the name for the
Nice.
company. And you can also find us on social media. We're on Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn, and maybe Twitter or X, whatever they call it now. And also, if you have any questions or want to reach out, like I said earlier, love hearing from people. And if 15 minutes of my time can help you, I don't know, change your trajectory in any way, shape, or form, then feel free to reach out.
I love that. So generous of you, and you're amazing. You, Liesel, and the company, and all of you there are just inspiring. And we are very excited to work with you guys and continue to collaborate. And it's just one of many things that we'll do together. So thanks for being here. And once the episode is out, I promise to share everywhere and obviously send you guys the links.
Awesome. Thanks, Jacob. This is awesome.